Let us be a cautionary tale. Well, hello. Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. Welcome back.
Yeah, I thought you were going to start singing.
No, I wasn't doing that song. It was literally like a welcome back. But
I mean, you could also do the Jeezy version, like, oh, welcome back. Guess who's back? And I'm shining on you.
Yes, Mr. Jenkins.
Go to hell.
G.Y. Jenkins, period.
Oh my God.
Welcome back, everybody. What episode are we on? Is it 9?
What? I think this is episode 7.
I'm just going to go to my It's an Okay podcast Spotify, where you guys can find us.
Ooh,
and I'm going to count. This is episode 8.
Wow.
Oh, because when it comes out, it will be that's the other thing, because we record in advance.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. True shit.
That's awesome. We made it to episode 8.
Girl, double digit.
Almost.
Almost.
I think our sister forgot to count. It's fine. Nobody judge her.
Wait, what did you think I said?
You said double digits.
I said we are almost in the double digits.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't hear the almost.
The two of them, like, who chose violence? Me or you guys?
You.
We definitely had your back. We were not going to call you out. We were like, yes, almost.
Yeah, so you like backed me up because I said almost.
Yeah. Totally.
I'm done.
Well, today's episode is about therapy.
Ooh, child.
If you feel
things are gonna get easier.
Except they're not, and you're gonna cry, and your therapist might have to,
might have to be like, the I just want to say I still love you.
Oh.
And everybody's like,
oh my gosh,
this is such a nice moment.
Oh my goodness.
Well, yes, today is about therapy. So we're just going to delve in, talk about our individual therapist experiences. When we started going to therapy, what was the thing that made us go to therapy? So it's going to be a fun yet serious episode. Please make sure you guys are following us on Spotify. Make sure you're commenting on our Instagram and following us on the Instagram. We want to hear from you guys. So definitely don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Purr.
Who wants to start? All about therapy.
Oh, man.
So my first experience with therapy, I was like 13 or 14. I was a freshman in high school. I was having issues at my high school. I'm handicapped, so I went to a really, really big school that was like really heavy on like violence. And so we would have
wait, what? I went to a big school that was heavy on violence.
Yeah, it's the truth. We went to a school. We had like 3 lockdowns that year. One of them was a bomb threat. And so it just started like weighing on me really heavily. And so that was the first time I asked my mom. I told my mom I was just feeling really off and I wanted to talk to someone. And I think we talked about this in like last episode, and she's God bless her, very smart, very accomplished woman. Not the person you want to talk to about like, I needed to talk to someone who was a professional and wasn't my mother. So
yeah, I mean, but that has like, she could be the best therapist. She's not a therapist, but she could be, and still might not be the appropriate person for you to talk to.
Exactly, because it might be hard for her if I come to her like, sad about something. It might be hard for her to not say, let's get this bread. So I wanted to talk to someone who wasn't going to reply, let's get this bread.
Wait, do you want to explain what "let's get this bread" means? Did you see that thing on Instagram? Sorry to like.
No, yeah. What thing? I didn't see it.
Yeah, but she told me to break a leg.
Oh, yeah. She kept saying like, "I'm gonna break your legs." And then it was serious.
And then there was the one where they say, "Oh, I'd love to see it," and then
to see what?
And then she sent her the Google Maps direction. She's like, "Wait." Something was lost in translation. So get this bread.
Yes, I did see the one that was like, you ate that. The girl that she was calling her fat.
Yeah, she goes, no, she said, why you ate?
Yeah. But so let's get this bread means let's get this money, this cheddar.
Right.
This
so
dollar bill,
you were
y'all.
trying to avoid being like, oh, I feel sad. And then the response being like, let's focus on achievement as opposed to like, let's
unpack why you're sad. Right. Exactly. So I started going to therapy in my adult life. I it was like always ringing in my head. And I would always like recommend my friends go to therapy. Like they would do something and I'd be like, you should probably see a therapist.
Why am I like
shady
this?
Or were you being like honest or both?
No, I was being so serious.
Okay.
Like I was being so absolutely serious. So I went through like a traumatic job experience. And after that, I was like, okay, I have like another year and a half on my mom's insurance. I need to take advantage of this like opportunity that I have to really talk to someone about why I feel like I get in situations that I wasn't looking for. Cause like my job experience was very traumatic for me. Cause like, especially like, I'm not expecting to be like called slurs in a work environment. So I was like, I really, really need to talk to somebody because it impacted me so negatively. And so I went to therapy, but like we started talking about friendships and my relationship to others, and it's actually been such a great experience for me. And I really, really recommend therapy for anyone who's gone through any sort of trauma in their life. It doesn't even have to be the biggest trauma ever in the entire world. You don't even have to be so sad. I recommend just going to someone and unlearning so many things that we've learned from survival in this world, and not necessarily that'll help us grow. And so my biggest goal going into therapy is that I wanted to grow from the experiences I had been in. And you know, the phrase that's like, you're destined to repeat the lesson until you learn. I was like, okay, I'm definitely sick of learning like any and
repeating this lesson.
I'm just ready to grow from this situation. And that was the catalyst for me to go in and talk to somebody, and we really spent the time unpacking a lot. And I actually have she gave me an assignment last week that I have not completed, but it was like, what are the qualities you look for in friends? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't freaking know. Nice, creative. No, I'm kidding. So when looking for a therapist, I went to psychologytoday.com, and everyone can do this. So if you're someone out there who's looking for a therapist, you can do this as well. And you narrow it down by your zip code, and then you can narrow it down by like woman or man or non-binary person, and like if they are LGBT inclusive. For me, it was very important to get a therapist who is not only a Black woman but LGBTQIA inclusive, because I think life is already like hard enough. You don't need someone in therapy gaslighting your experiences, whether they're gaslighting your experience, like whether they are aware that they're doing it or not. I have known people who have like gone to therapy and their therapists have said something like completely out of whack to them because they can't sympathize with their experience.
Yeah.
So it was really important for me to find someone who can sympathize with my experience, who I don't have to explain why this was a microaggression. Like you shouldn't be fighting for your life in therapy. Like your therapist should already know how to sympathize with your, like with basic things that you go through, so that you can really get to the root of your, I don't want to say issues, but your issues.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so without saying too much, my therapist has really given me like really good tools on, I used to be a huge people pleaser, and I just want to let all the people pleasers out there know, you're not doing anybody any favors. Like, you're not doing, no one feels flattered by like the lack of boundaries that you have.
Yeah.
Get some boundaries. I promise you'll be so much happier once you get boundaries, because I like just comparing the difference of when I had no boundaries, like the way I would handle things is so differently now. And not only that, but because I have boundaries now, I'm able to make proper space for people who genuinely want to be in my life and are not just there because like it's convenient.
Yeah.
So it's made me really second guess the way I make friends and interact with people. And I really appreciate it because I feel like it's made me a stronger individual.
Lovely. Thank you for sharing. Beth, would you like to go next or would you like me to go next?
Would you like to go next? I can go next.
Okay, go ahead.
My first stint in therapy was, I think, in college, because I didn't have a therapist until about 22 years old, which is crazy because I really needed it. But I didn't even know that they had, like, I don't know what's going on in my mind. Like, they'll tell you that Samelia literally went to school down the street, and I, for some reason, thought she went to school somewhere else. Like, when I don't think about stuff until it's like,
the cognitive dissonance is real.
Yeah.
Seriously. I'm like, I don't know why you ever thought that. She's like, yeah, you were so far away. I'm like,
girl, I was down the street.
You. Oh man, continue.
Yeah, and I don't know. I genuinely don't know why I was like that. And sometimes, I mean, I'm like that till today. I'm like that somewhat today, where like I really will just be like, until I'm faced with something, I'm like, oh, why didn't I think of this before? It's like, girl, why didn't you think about therapy? So my therapist back then, she wasn't even really a therapist. It was a counselor. She was a multicultural and diversity counselor that was appointed by the university, because I went to a school that was a PWI, predominantly white institute, for those that don't know the terminology.
As compared to a what?
As compared to a historically Black college or university.
Also known as?
An HBCU.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry. You're welcome. And so at the PWI, we had like it was called the Upperman Center. And it was basically where the multicultural students could come and like, because like, I'm dead serious. The campus was really on some like, you would spot somebody else of color like in this sea of people and like wave or give a head nod, and it was like, okay, cool, I feel seen. Like, it was really awesome. Like, there was like one or three of us in a class, so you would go to the Upperman Center, and that's where we would kind of all like congregate to just kind of hang out and like share our experiences. And like, I made some really cool friends in the Upperman, and I always felt safe. Like, I did not, like, if I needed it something in between classes, I would just go to the Up, and like I would sit in there and do my homework. And so there was a woman, because at the time there was a girl that was trying to bully me in the Upperman Center. God only knew, I don't know why, but everybody else kind of started to get sick of it, because it was like, I'm the kind of person, like, as I got older, when I was younger, it was easy for people to bully me. When I got older, it's like, you can say whatever you want, and I'm gonna let you talk, because like, I'm really not gonna try to hit you. You know what I mean? So I'm just gonna let you talk crap, and I'm gonna sit here and mind my business and eat my food. And so she would talk crap about me all the time. Well, like, one thing I've learned is that like, when people talk about you and you don't say anything, eventually they all start to realize that you're not the problem. It's the other person. Right. So one girl was like, she had enough, and she went and told the woman that I eventually would go to what was going on. And like, you know, she kind of came out and like introduced herself to me, and she's like, if you ever like, you know, need someone to talk to, my office I have an open door policy. Like, you can always stop by if I am available, and we can just talk. And like, I was just like, like, you know, I didn't really think at the time I needed it, but like 2 years later, I went through like one of the most traumatic experiences, and that conversation popped in my head. And so I immediately like went to her office, and like, she is the reason I think I am still here, because she taught me off some ledges. Like, I was ready to go ape SHIT on some people. And she is the reason that she was just like, you know, she put it in perspective. Like, you know, I was married and I went through this, and it was just kind of like having somebody that could like speak life into my lifeless body on things that she's experienced was just like so amazing. So even though she wasn't like a paid therapist, she was like a therapist, because she let me come and unbiasedly let me vent and just air out my frustrations and the things I was going through, and never once sent me away.
Yeah.
She was always there. And to this day, like, I call her my mother. MUVA. But like, and then mom and her have become friends because it was just like she is the reason I graduated college. Like I would have dropped out because it was that bad.
Yeah.
And then my second time in therapy, I started taking my antidepressants because one thing I've learned about myself is that like I'm kind of like mom, where it's like, let's get this bread. I'll be like crying through my pain, but like over here working. So, I would like bottle up my emotions and just like handle them later. But then I've learned that they come out in other ways, i.e. my toe. Yeah. Speak on it. And so I broke my toe, guys, in a fit of rage. And so I've learned to like, with her, when they were like putting me on the medication, because they were like, I was like, I'm just not okay. I think something's going wrong with me. And I just think I'm so, and like, I just bust out in tears. And my doctor was like, I'm going to put you on an antidepressant. Because it was like, so like, I'm talking to her and then I just like bust out crying. So she was like, well, while I put you on this, you have to see a therapist.
Yeah.
So, and I had some of the same guidelines as Corinne that, you know, I want to speak to somebody that's not going to gaslight me in my experience. And so it was like, she must be a female and she must be Black, because I feel like, especially in a dark-skinned Black woman at that.
Mm-hmm.
So I made sure to find my therapist based on those. And I told my doctor, I was like, these are my requirements. And she was like, okay. And so she helped me narrow it down. And then I was able to get someone and go to her. And at that time I didn't have insurance. So I had only gone to her about a couple of times. And then unknowingly to my doctor, I stopped going, which I might need to start back up again. Because she probably wanted to use her hands.
Woke up and chose violence.
Woke up and chose violence. But yeah, that's my kind of come to therapy story.
Oh, thank you for sharing.
Not this therapy sessions was getting. We respect and thank you so much.
For me, I'm like sitting here thinking through like, okay, what was my journey with therapy? So I first like reached out for therapy, I think when I was like 13, and there was no space for that. We'll just say that. So
I'm ready to pull up on you.
There just wasn't space for it. And when I think back to why, there's a lot of things happening. And so I can understand and hold space for the fact that there was no space for me to like attend therapy. And then it was a lot of stigma, right? It's not like as talked about now. And, you know, I think now parents, you know, if your child says I need therapy, you probably don't feel like, you won't internalize it as much, right?
Yeah. Oh, wow, that's important.
Right. But like but I think when I was younger, it was internalized. And so if your child came to you and said, I need therapy, or, you know, I'm not feeling well, then I think it would have been very easy to internalize it as if it was something that you weren't doing as a parent, or that you were doing poorly as a parent, which is not the case. So I started journaling, and I hope those journals are burned somewhere, because I never want to see them again. But it's not like it was anything bad, but I just wrote everything in my journals, right, when I was in high school, and that I would literally like write out what happened all day. If someone did something, if I experienced a microaggression, if I experienced like an overt aggression, I would write about it. And then once I got to the end, I would like go back and read it, and I would process it. And then I would like, you know, send it off out to sea. I wouldn't think about it again. And so it really was very therapeutic for me. I also would write my journals to God. And so there was a book that I loved, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. So I don't know if I thought if I thought it was Margaret, but I was definitely writing to God. And so it was almost like a very spiritual practice for me. So I would write to God, write to the things that I was frustrated about. And by the time I got finished writing, I wouldn't be frustrated about it anymore. And I got a lot of healing through that. So I just journaled from high school through college. And then in grad school, I was attacked and someone tried to kill me. And so I suffered from like mild PTSD after that, and it was compounded by the fact that I like didn't like I wasn't not I don't want to say I wasn't allowed, but I was asked not to tell like my sisters. And so yeah, I just had to go through like a lot of therapy with a psychologist that I had through my college. So it was really, I think that all colleges and universities have it now, and I'm so thankful that mine had it. My grad school had it, where it was included in your tuition that you had mental health support, and it wasn't like volunteer mental health support. It was like, you know, legit licensed therapist. And so that's where I got connected with my first therapist, and she was amazing. I went to her once a week, and on Fridays, and it was just like Thursday or Friday, and it was just, you know, this great experience where I could go and like really kind of talk through the things that I was dealing with. Because I ended up from that incident, I ended up taking off a semester. Like I withdrew from like my classes, and I didn't withdraw. I took incompletes on my classes because I just couldn't get it together. You know, understandably so. So I'm not judging myself. I just needed the time.
Yeah.
And so I stayed with her until I finished grad school. And at the time I finished grad school, I had a baby. And so I then went through like a 3-year period of like postpartum that I didn't realize.
Why are you laughing?
Because she told me, she was like,
postpartum TV.
She told me, she was like, yeah, I just woke up one day and I was like, wait, I have a baby.
Oh.
No. Yeah, it was like I woke up one day, like when he was 3, and like it was like the sky was clear, and I was like, has it been foggy the past 3 years?
Yeah.
Like, you know, I felt so disconnected from myself, and there were
baby always been here.
No. Like, who are you?
Right.
Where are your parents? And why are you looking at me? Like, no, it wasn't that bad. I had not disassociated from life, but it was just like I was living a duller version of life, right? Mm-hmm. So like, I had a traumatic birth. There was a lot of trauma that I experienced around becoming a mom. And so, yeah, like I just really felt I was like struggling. And, you know, I would reach out to my therapist from college or from grad school, and she's like, you know, whatever I can do to help, you know. And so she would have sessions with me over the phone, which this, you know, at the time that wasn't really a thing, but we would be on the phone, and she's like, I mean, I can't do this all the time, but, you know, I want you to be okay. And then there were times where she's like, do you think that you need to be on like antidepressants? And I'm like, I don't think so. She's like, well, you know, if you start feeling like X, Y, and Z, and she would outline, you know, the feelings that would lead her to say that I needed it. And she's like, if you feel like this, then you should get on it. So I'm like, okay. And so I never did, but, you know, I just always knew that I could if I needed to. Mm-hmm. And I was going to try to like maintain that relationship, but, you know, she was more than an hour away from, or probably an hour and a half away from where I lived. Mm-hmm. And so it just wasn't practical, like to try to like because I'd have to take the baby somewhere so I could go to therapy, and then, you know, during the work hours. So it just wasn't feasible for me. So I think I kind of like, the world became more clear, but I think I was still kind of processing through like depression just because of other like life circumstances. Mm-hmm. And it kind of like things, I don't know how to say it, but eventually, like maybe 2 years after that conversation I had with her, I ended up going to see a counselor, and the counselor was through my church. And so it was like pastoral counseling. And I started that because I think I was just trying to understand myself better so I could understand my environment better. So I can ultimately make things better and just more harmonious and peaceful. And so I started seeing that counselor. And that counselor was the first person who kind of helped me like see clearly some things that were happening in my life. She's like, do you think this could be happening? And I'm like, at first I was like, no, I don't think so. And then she's like, okay, well, just read this pamphlet. And then let's talk about it, so she was very gentle with helping me to realize that, like there are things that are happening that are just not healthy. And like, we could get to a better place. And so I have been with that counselor and I still see her from time to time. But we live in an area that's not so diverse. And so eventually like there were things that were happening like around the country that were like racial in nature, racist. And so I would be trying to explain it. And then I felt like I was spending part of my like counseling session explaining my experience and like why I felt the way I felt, which to me just felt like it wasn't
productive.
Yeah. And so at that point, I listened to this podcast called Therapy for Black Girls. And I'm not like a
miscellaneous audio.
I listened to a miscellaneous audio called Therapy for Black Girls. And it was really just eye-opening. And they have a website with a network of like, counselors. And so you can go and find culturally competent therapists. And so I started looking into that. And then I stumbled upon, they have like the Talkspace app and, all of those things. But I stumbled upon one called Hurdle, and it's called Hurdle Health. And they specifically focus on like providing culturally competent therapists in my like region. And so I reached out to them and got connected, and that ended up being a really, fantastic experience. And I've started to like learn the difference between counselors and therapists. But one of the things that I think because I was like in a triage situation, right? Like things were really important. It was really important that I had the support to get through the season of life that I was in at the time with my counselor. And I feel like now I have a little bit more space with my therapist to start working through the issues that got me into those situations. And so that's I have an actual like a therapy plan, and there are assignments that I need to do. And so I find that to be really helpful for the season of life that I'm in now. And I'm still able to hold space for my counselor who I have that, long-standing relationship with. I just know like if it's something like culturally,
Yeah.
and honestly, we have had time to like talk about it, right? When I was ready, I went back to her and I said, look, this is how I feel. And she, held space for that and was able to listen and understand where I was coming from, and, was super apologetic. So I like the team approach now, where I have like, some therapists who are more focused on like helping me unpack issues that, might lead to maladaptive, situations. But also having like a counselor that I can kind of see for maintenance, who's more readily accessible. So
you have two.
Yeah,
well, you have a counselor and a therapist.
I have a counselor and a therapist.
Sure. Okay, so I have a question. Have you guys ever been to a bad therapist? I mean, I know you said your counselor wasn't bad, but like, have you ever had an experience with a therapist where you were like, I'm not coming back here? Have you seen a TikTok is like, can I get you anything else, sir? A to-go box, because I'm not comfortable eating here no more.
Oh my gosh. No, but that sounds hilarious.
It's so funny. Have you guys ever been through situations where you're like, I need a to-go box?
Not I need a to-go box.
I have. In college, I was seeing a therapist, and I actually forgot about this, and rightfully so. And so they sent me to a therapist because, like, that's just college protocol.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not funny, but like the way she talked to me was crazy. She was just like, I need you to understand it's not your fault.
What?
Wow.
Yeah, because I was like, I was in a stage of like blaming myself for what happened, and she was just mad. She was like, it was like passion, like when you
rage.
No, literally, it's like when you want someone to understand like things like that are not your fault, but like instead of like talking me through and being like, okay, so why do you feel like it's your fault? Do you feel like that could be a stigma of what, like, there's so many other ways she could have handled that.
Yeah.
She was like, I just need you to understand it is not your fault. I'm like, say it. I'm
like, are you mad
like,
at me?
It's not my fault.
Did I do something wrong?
No, I had 2 sessions. I stopped going. I was like, I'm good on this forever. And that didn't deter me from therapy because like I didn't sign up for that. Like that, I was like forced to go. And I would have never chosen her for myself. But I just thought that was funny that was our college therapist. Like this woman who was like yelling at me was my college therapist. I'm like, do you even believe what you're saying? Or are you just like is this a projection? No, literally, because like the way you're handling this problem is not like a therapist.
Right.
Like
I think I've been very blessed and very fortunate to have good therapists. I've like met with people before to like talk, and then, you know, just it wasn't a good fit.
Mm-hmm.
But they never did anything that was like harmful or said anything crazy. I'm just like, okay, you know, I'm going to reach back out to the center, and if they match me with you again, then we'll see.
Right.
and I didn't get matched with them again. And then let me think. I like one of the things I have with my current therapist. There were a couple times where I'm like, I think I'm just not going to go see her anymore because she said this and I don't like that.
Yeah.
And and, you know, the people very lovingly in my life were just like, I mean, maybe you should talk to her about it. And I'm like, why should I talk to her about it? She's like, well, I don't know, but maybe if you're avoiding this conversation, there may be other conversations in your life that you're avoiding. And like the therapy relationship is just mirroring relationships you have in your life. And I was like, huh. That was Nikki. That was
oh, okay.
But she's a counselor, so right. You know. And I'm like, oh, okay. So you're not going to tell me that I can leave,
right?
That's what I came here for.
It's like, no, but I want you to tell me what I want to hear.
100%.
Say it right now. I'm like, Smelly, I'm not doing that.
I don't think I've had any, because I've literally not gone to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Now there's a lot of people that I would not confide in.
Well, that's a problem for therapists. Like, if you don't feel comfortable to confide in them, then you shouldn't go to them.
Yeah.
People confuse the crap out of me when they go to therapy and they're like, avoided another conversation with my therapist. Like, you're paying money. You don't have to.
Right. You're wasting your own time because they're getting paid either way.
Right. Wasting your whole hour or however long and money. And then you're not growing. You're just staying stagnant.
Right.
Well, that's just because they haven't had a parent like ours where it's like, let's get this bread.
No, I'm sure their parents are worse. Like, I'm not in therapy because of my parents. I'm in therapy for the outside world.
Yeah. What do you guys think of the comment, like when people make the comment like, I don't need therapy. I have like friends. I have family. I can just talk to them. Like, what are your guys' thoughts on that?
Your family is tired of listening to you. Deadass. I'm just going to put it to you plainly. Your family wants you to shut the fuck up. Get a therapist.
You know what's hilarious to me? You spelled out SHIT, but just said.
You literally did.
It's interesting.
She was trying. She tried.
Yeah, I tried, but that's where I draw the line. Get a therapist.
Well, okay. So it's not that your family, I think your family and friends want to be supportive, but I also think that like they're not trained therapists unless they are. And even if they were, they couldn't treat you. So like find someone who can help you come up with a therapeutic strategy to get to a better place, because like your friends and family can like hold like space for you because they love you, but they can't necessarily help you work through your like trauma.
Yeah, agreed. Not even necessarily so. Like, there are some situations where I'm like, I don't know how to hold space for this.
Yeah.
Like, I just learned how to hold space for other people's issues and not internalize them.
Yeah.
And I had to go to therapy myself to do that. Like, so I think you do yourself a disservice, and I think you do other people a disservice. I just think it's not fair to constantly trauma dump on your friends and family.
Yeah.
Especially if they don't know how to hold space for what you're saying, because then you're just going to be putting them through stress.
Yeah.
And like if you eventually figure out how to get your problem fixed, like that person's just going to be stressed for you.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's fair to trauma dump on people. And I definitely think it's important to talk to someone who knows how to hold correct space for what it is that you're feeling.
Yeah, agreed.
Because I could give you terrible advice if I don't know how to hold space. You know what I'm saying? Like, I could give really bad advice.
Yeah.
If I'm not looking at the situation, if I'm looking at the situation from my own perspective and not from your perspective, I could tell you what I would do with my life. But and if you go apply it to your life, it'd mess your whole life up. And now you're mad at me.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's fair. Stop it. Get some help. I'm such an advocate for going to therapy and just unpacking from the biggest problem to the smallest problem that you have in your life. Like, I feel like there's so many things in my life. Like, I've been in therapy for like 2 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't even like, we're still scratching the surface on my abandonment issues. Like,
yeah.
I just figured out I had abandonment issues, guys. Give me a round of applause.
Rounds of applause, baby, make that ass clap.
No, yeah, I think that was, there's just so much in our lives that we go through as people that we shouldn't have to like go through by ourselves. And I just like having the tools to unlearn.
Yeah.
So many things that that I had to learn from the world through survival. So
what do you think about like therapy and relationships? Like, would you date someone who didn't go to therapy?
Oh, wow. Yes, I would go to therapy. Would I encourage them to go to therapy? Yes. But that's because I just encourage anyone that I care about, where I'm like, you definitely, like, you should unpack this with someone who could help you.
Yeah.
I just recommend, like, especially if I see like patterns of behavior where they're being destructive, I'm like, you should definitely talk to someone.
Right.
Because I know what it's done for me. Like, I'm not the same person that I was 3 years ago.
Yes.
And I mean, obviously, duh. But like in ways that are so, because we grow. Like, I'll look at a picture of myself from last year and be like, oh my God, cringe. Why did I do that? Right? That's a sign of growth.
Yeah.
If you wouldn't do that. But what I need are like tools of how to move through the world, not just like growth within myself, like growth within a bigger picture. Because I don't just live with me.
Yeah.
And I'm a Cancer. I'm really sensitive and take a lot of things personally. So I sometimes need someone to be like, so why did you take that personally? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know why I took it personally.
I don't know why I didn't take it personally.
It's range. I just have a button that's like, take that personally.
I'm trying to think of like, so for me, therapy, I think it's important that everybody goes to it. Just because I've seen a lot of things where I'm like, I feel like, I don't know, because if you really think about it, within our family, it's a lot of people that I feel like should go to therapy, right? I don't mean it with shade.
Drill, put them out.
No, I don't mean it with shade. I mean that with like wholehearted love. Like, I feel like we are the generation that is literally we are our ancestors' wildest dreams. Like, we are really out here breaking curses, generational curses, so that we don't to our offspring. Because a lot of things that I feel that unknowingly, that could have been detrimental to how we were. I mean, good thing, like, we were raised with love, but like if we weren't, that could have been detrimental to like our psyche and like who we are as people, because we could have internalized some of the things that were either said or done, but that wasn't based on who we are. It's based on the person that is struggling, that has maybe not taken the time to do the inner work and or say, okay, you know what, I do have a problem and I might need to speak to someone.
Right.
Because like, I know in the Black community, I can't really speak on anybody other community because I'm not in it, but I know, especially with us and especially with our upbringing, coming from us like a Southern, a Baptist, family, everything was like, well, pray about it. And it's like, sometimes prayer is not the only option, or it's not the only solution. Like, I've already prayed, but right now I really need to talk to somebody.
Right. I think so. This makes me think about like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Mm-hmm. And I always use this when I like if I'm like talking to someone about holding space for someone else, or if I'm trying to understand, like, how we talk about people are raised on love or not raised on love.
Yeah.
Like, the way that I understand it is through the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So like you have your basic needs. So it's like are you guys familiar with it?
You have your cousins. Sorry.
You have your cousins and then your first cousin.
I am kind of familiar, but you can definitely explain.
Okay. So it's a triangle shape. And then if you look at the triangle, it has like 5 different layers. And the bottom layer is physiological needs. So that's like food, water, warmth, rest. And then right above physiological needs is safety needs. So that's like security and safety. Above that is belongingness and love needs. So that's like intimate relationships and friends. Above that is esteem needs. And so that's prestige and feeling of accomplishment. And then the last or the very top portion of the pyramid is self-actualization. And so that's achieving one's full potential. And that includes creative activities, right? Mm. And so the theory is that you cannot address a need that is above where you currently are until you've fully met the needs of where you are. So like if I don't have food, water, warmth, and rest, which is a basic need at the bottom of the triangle, I can't worry about safety or security.
Right.
So if I can't worry about safety and security, I can't worry about belongingness and love. I can't worry about esteem. I can't worry about self-actualization.
Yes.
And so the way that I look at it, like, because I would oftentimes be like, I don't understand. Like, it's like people who talk about their parents and they're like, well, my dad just said, well, I come home every night and I make sure that there's food on the table and I make sure. And so that's how you know I love you. And it's like, yeah, but Dad, you never said you loved me.
Right.
And he's like, well, I loved you the way I knew how. Right.
Right.
I think that all ties back to, or can be explained by the hierarchy of needs, because your father, if you felt like that with your father or your mother, it is very likely that they were just trying to make sure that your basic needs were met. And that's as much as they could do, right? And so when we talk about people who are like raised on love or not raised on love, it's not like their parents didn't want to love them. Maybe they loved them in the way that they knew how. But if I am someone who is at the top of the pyramid and I'm loving from a place of self-actualization, and I'm with a partner who is like at safety and security, I'm going to not feel loved. Like, aside from the fact that we might have different, like communication styles or different, what do they call it? Like if you're physical touch or love language, we might have a different love language. But that aside, if I'm coming from a place of self-actualization and you're coming from a place of safety, you're just like, look, I mean, you have a house, don't you?
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, but I also want like
love.
Yeah, I want to feel accomplished. I want to feel like we are doing something together in our relationship.
Yeah.
And so I think when we're able to kind of like look at it like that, you take things less personally. It's not like you don't love me because you think that there's something wrong with me and I'm not lovable. You are not at the place where you can love me. And so I think oftentimes when you talk about family dynamics, we are blessed in the sense that we are at a place where we are able to break those generational curses, right? So like if you think about like, especially in the South, especially with Black families, and it might be with, you might experience this with immigrant families as well. But like when you are, 2 generations removed from like segregation, like the things that are available to you are very different. So the things that were available to our grandmother is very different than the things that were available to us. Like our grandmother was alive and living during like whites only entrances and water fountains. So like the way that there was no one was like offering her therapy to go when she was experiencing like trauma, when her husband went to war and came back and he was suffering with his own trauma. Like, they didn't have the tools that we have. And so I don't know, I think it's almost like our responsibility to like become healthier because we have access to it. Whereas, a lot of our relatives did not, they have access to it now, but they, if you spend 60 years growing up doing things one way, the likelihood that you're going to change is small. It's possible, but it's small.
Glad that we touched on generational curses. We are not only unpacking our present day trauma, but we're unpacking what we learned and what our parents learned and what our grandparents learned through survival.
Yeah.
I'm glad we touched on that.
one thing that Beth, you talked about earlier, and I kind of mentioned, but is just like your journey with antidepressants.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because girl, I remember when I first got on, I was like, girl, you need them. Get on them. They changed my life. You were like, but I don't want to. And I was like, no, you need them. You need them. I promise you, I'm back to normal.
I think that's I don't see therapy as being as big of I've never seen therapy as a stigma, but I've heard more about like medicines being a stigma.
Yeah.
Oh, so go ahead.
And like, you know, people can have a stigma on it, but like, screw you. Exactly. Period.
It's the battle cry.
Okay, SpongeBob.
But yeah, I want you guys to talk more about that. I was on ADD medicine for a while, and it didn't work for me. So I would love to hear you guys' perspective on like medicines that worked for you guys.
So I've never been on or prescribed antidepressants or anything like that. I've thought about it. Like I've had friends and family members who said, oh, this worked for me. I think in my particular situation, there were things that were happening environmentally that I was trying to work through, and they may have been helpful to me when I was working through it. But I also think, you know, I hadn't gotten to a place. There were things that I could do that were within my power to do. And so I made those changes. And then once I made those changes, I felt better. Like I didn't feel like I needed them. But I mean, I still keep it. I do think there's a little bit of like a hesitance for me, like to take it, but only because I'm like, am I doing everything that I could be doing to make things better? And that might be something I have to work through in therapy. I don't know. But I am hesitantly open to it. I think this is really good. Wow, record scratch. I think this was a really good a good episode. It's a really important topic, and I think that just creating space for it and talking and sharing our experience with each other has been really nice.
Yeah.
Where did you, with your therapist now, have you did you use like an app or anything to find her, or you just
no, dead serious? Like we were in the doctor's office like while she's prescribing me my medication, and she's like, she pulls up like her database, and like of course like a list of people pop up. It's like mainly men, and I was like, before you continue, I need Black and female. And then
so I'm gonna stop you right there.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop you right there before you even like try to give me somebody on this list. Black and female, preferably dark skin. And she was like, she kind of like, first of all, my doctor's Hispanic, so she was just like, okay. And she typed in African American therapist. And like a list of people popped up, but like majority of the people didn't look like me. Right. And I just feel like they aren't gonna have my experience. So, right. And that's not to say somebody else that doesn't look like me can't share, you know, similarities, but like the dark skinned woman experience is not a fun experience. And I need at least somebody that is going to speak to those traumas.
Yeah, like the colorism that you experience, the stereotypes that you have to face. They're mostly negative stereotypes. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that makes sense. Like, so you went through your healthcare provider, your primary care physician.
Yeah.
Okay. I would recommend to anyone looking, specifically if you're looking for like a cultural competent therapist, hurdle.health is where I found my current therapist. But I've also looked on providers.therapy for blackgirls.com. So we will put that in somewhere, either on our social media or in our show notes.
And I got mine off of, I said this earlier, but Psychology Today. You can go and find a therapist, and they'll help you narrow it down.
So with that, we tell you, get therapy, but in the most loving way possible.
With all love. Because even if you feel like you don't have a current problem right now, there could be some generational traumas that, you know,
You know, that's a really good point, Corinne. Not to cut you off. That's a really good point. Like sometimes just getting comfortable with a therapist is great because if you just go and see them, it's like a primary care physician, right? You go in for your annual checkup, but then if something happens, you already have that relationship that you can go and turn to, and they can help you walk through difficult seasons because difficulties happen for everyone. That's an inevitability.
That's why I think that everybody should, like, I think it should be mandatory that everybody go to therapy. I really do, because I feel like more people, if they could just like talk out their issues,
yeah,
it would just be like less. I mean, would it be less issues in the world? But like, you know, I just feel like more people need to talk about their problems.
Oh my gosh, I forgot to say this. I went to a therapist in the 5th grade. I went to an art therapist, and it was quite a fun experience. I just got to do art for like 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And in my head, I'm like, why do I need to see a therapist? Like, I think sometimes people put like problems on you that really aren't like your own. Like, so many people want me to have dad issues so badly. It's really weird. And I'm like, listen, I don't have daddy issues or mommy issues because I would never give either of them credit for the bad bitch that I am today. They were trying to like pry something out of me, like about my parents' divorce that I just didn't feel. But I think that's another thing. Like, you guys don't feel pressured. Like, don't feel like, you know, you have to go to therapy because you have to feel a certain way because of like what people are telling you. Like, it could be this one thing that sends you to therapy. Like it was for me. It was something, this was my feather on the camel's back that made me want to start going to therapy. But when I got to my therapist, we didn't even talk about that. We barely talked about that situation. I went to therapy. We were pinpointing how I can grow all around in my life from that, from other things, from just whatever.
Yes.
So it's not to pressure you, but it's just to encourage you to maybe something's weighing on you and you just don't realize it.
Yeah. And I think it also helps you, it fosters more connectivity in your relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps you to kind of create more authentic connections. It gives you the tools that you need to create more authentic connections. And so, yeah, I think it's great.
Well, thanks for joining us today, guys.
Thanks,
this was such
guys.
a cool episode. I'm glad we got to talk about therapy. I said that every
episode. I know. As soon as you said it, I'm like, oh, deja vu.
Well,
been another episode, a great episode of It's an Okay podcast.
Yes.
Follow us on Instagram at It's an Okay podcast and Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcast. I'm Samelia.
I'm Beth.
And I'm Corin.
Oh, first of all, I'm Corinne Grace. Don't disrespect me like that.
Bye, guys.